첫 번째 강연으로는 바르트 아커후이스, 프랑스 스튜디오 아커후이스 님께서 건축 문화자산의 재생과 도시의 미래라는 주제로 준비를 해주셨습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 바르트 아커후이스 님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. 힘찬 박수 부탁드립니다.
Thank you very much, and good to all see you. Thank you very much, Professor Lee, for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here today. Korea has been a country always very close to my heart, so to be here today is a great thing. Let me introduce myself. My name is, I need this one, sorry. My name is Bart Akkerhuis. I'm from Studio Akkerhuis in Paris. I'm an architect. And although I live in Paris, my background is from the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, the country of tulips, flowers, but also the country of beautiful paintings in the 19th, 17th century. This is Delft. This is the the city where I studied in, actually. But you mostly know my country maybe to Mr. Guus Hiddink, the soccer coach. That helped you go to the semi-finals in the 2002 World Cup. He's an important man. Another important man in my life is Mr. Renzo Piano. He is an architect from Italy. He's a bit older than me. He's 87 at the moment. And he has been my master for 10 years. I worked for him for 10 years in his Paris office. Renzo Piano is the head of the Renzo Piano Building Workshop, where I was an associate. And he's mostly famous for Centre Pompidou in Paris. I worked a bit later. Centre Pompidou was built when I was born, so I didn't work on this project. But I worked on several other projects in the Paris office, notably quite some big projects. The Shard in London on the left. Looks a bit like the Lotte Tower sometimes, but I won't comment on that too much. And here you see the Shard from another side. I also worked on other different projects, like the Paris Courthouse in Paris. It's the law courts for Paris. The beautiful thing about this is that Renzo always tries to make a place for people in this building. So again, here he doesn't just make a skyscraper, but he makes a garden for the workers to go out, even on a high floor at 180 meters. He plants trees with a beautiful view to the Eiffel Tower. And I think that characterizes the architecture of Renzo very much. I also worked for Renzo Piano a bit on some Korean projects. This is Yongsan. Luckily or unluckily, it never happened, depending on what side you are. It's a 120 meter tall tower in the Yongsan district. It was the highest in the whole Yongsan region. Again here, Renzo insisted on we built this big tower for this corporate client, but he insisted that the top of the building, the last 16 floors, are actually public. So for him, it's very important that the public gets the space even at the top of the tower, and it should be for free. It should be accessible for all. And I think that quantifies a lot the architecture that I like, and also the architecture where Renzo Piano stands for. I didn't do only big projects. I also did some more modest projects. This is a shopping, when I was at Renzo Piano's, this is a shopping center in San Francisco, or in the outskirts of San Francisco, and it's a very modest project. It's in the suburbs, it's in a village where there's only suburban sprawl, only houses, and there's not really a city center. So they asked us to build a shopping center, and that's not really a subject that we normally do a lot, but yes, from the outside it looks like a shopping center. But from the inside, what we started as a first point of start was to create a place for the people. So we started with the piazza. The piazza is the Italian word for plaza, which is very important in Renzo Piano's architecture and also in my architecture. It is the place where the people meet. So first we create a place where people meet, where people are invited, and then we go build the shoppings around them. And I think that works in the end, because it becomes a place where people meet, it becomes where people have joy, where fathers meet their grandchildren, where they have a coffee. And maybe in the end, yes, they go shopping, but that's not the most important place. So even in suburban America, we try to create this space for people on a very small scale, just a very suburban shopping center, but it works. And I think that's always very important to keep in mind, that when you construct your buildings or your projects, it should be for the people. So my firm, I started my firm 10 years ago in Paris. Again, I stayed in Paris. My firm is, we have a beautiful office in Paris. We are about 40 to 50 people from 19 nationalities. So it's a very mix of people, which gives a very dynamic influence, but you get also influence from all different cultures, which I think is important. I think also this mix is always very important thing in my office and in the work we do. And we don't only work in France, but we try to work in the whole of Europe, and even trying to work worldwide. So we have some projects in South America, North America, in the Middle East, in Africa, and we also have some partners in Korea. We're trying to win some work in Korea, and I'll show you some projects later about Korea. I think what is important to our office is that we're not specialized. We try to do different scales of buildings, so from the very small scale to the very large scale. We do a mix of projects. So it's not only large buildings or small buildings. We even design beer bottles for a project. We do a temporary theater. We do also transformation of huge projects and mixed high-rise towers. But we try to do everything, and I think that's important. So we do a mix of functions and a mix of skills with the diversity of people in a lot of different countries. And I think that as an architect, you always should be the conductor of the project, and you hire specialists when you need it, but you can take on any project you want if you want to as an architect. So that results in the past 10 years in a lot of projects, in a lot of diversity of projects. And what I want to show you today is with the theme of this symposium. I'd like to take you to 4 projects in Europe and 5 projects I did with our partner in Seoul, Archi Workshop, to show you what the potential can be of the site where we are today, to give you some ideas of the things we come to in our projects, and maybe they are useful for the project we see here today, because it's a very interesting project. If you look at the site, I just walked around today, it's a very interesting site. This structure that you see here actually reminds me very much of a project I did myself. I will show you later. In my project I take out the middle column only, but it is the same kind of structure. But it's beautiful, interesting heritage, it's beautiful structures, lots of different typologies, and could be fit for different users. So I think the site has a lot of potential. So it's very exciting to see the site and to be here today. And you see every building has its different identity, and you can do something with that building. For example, today where we are in this space, it's a beautiful space, and you can imagine things happening here. So as I said, we do 9 projects, 4 in Europe and 5 in Korea. I start with my project in Holland, which we started 10 years ago when I started my firm. This was one of the first projects we did. It's a cultural heritage site. It's an old factory, it's an abandoned factory, a flower factory. It's built, it started building in the 1890s, so 125 years ago, 135 years ago. And they added buildings, they demolished buildings up till the 1960s. It was abandoned in the 1980s. It's at the border of the city center. And my client bought it about 30 years ago, so it takes him so long to build this project, and is transforming it into a new part of the city. Here you can see the buildings during the ages. This is more or less how we found it when we arrived. Sometimes the buildings are quite beautiful from the outside, but mostly they're very beautiful from the inside. So there's beautiful concrete structures. We find beautiful architectural elements. Sometimes it's concrete, sometimes it's iron and brick, and sometimes it's steel and brick. And as we found that building here, we started to do building one by one. So we didn't do everything at once, but we took one step at a time, because sometimes a project like this, you need to eat the elephant one little bite by the other, otherwise you won't arrive at your destination. So on this model you can see that we transformed all the buildings, but the white part is the buildings that we added. So we also constructed some new buildings, or we added some things to the top. But and this will be the result when it's finished in 2027, so about 3 years from now. So we will be working 13, 14 years on this project, and my client will have been working 35, 40 years on this project. He was quite young when he started, he's quite old right now. We already finished some buildings. This is a building we finished, it's a housing project. There's a park designed by Piet Oudolf, the Dutch landscape architect, who is well known for the High Line. He also built something now at the moment in Korea, I think. Here you see parts of the park, but we also built some new structures. The building I'd like to talk to you about today is the Meelpakhuis. It's the building on the left. It's the brick building with almost no windows. And the client wanted to transform this one into a housing project. And here I think this is a lesson what we can learn for this project. So what is important to keep about this building? Because if you need to make a housing project, you need to make windows, you need to make balconies, and is that really possible with this building? So we looked clearly to this building, and for us, the structure was actually the most beautiful. The structure was the monumental part of the building. It wasn't the brick facade, which is quite boring, but it's the structure. So what we decided to do is to peel off the brick facade and leave the structure exposed, then put a new glass volume inside of the structure and put the functions in there. So here we started off peeling off the brick of the concrete structure, and we ended up with this, more or less. This then we needed to, of course, repair here and there because it was not totally in good state. But what we then do is what you can see here in the architecture model. The columns actually become the architecture of the building. So what we said here is, let's go back to the bones. The bones of the building, the monumental part of this building, is the architecture, is the structure, and that becomes the architecture. You see another model. On this floor plan, then you see that the facade is moved inwards, so it gives this space to the columns outside. Here you see the model. Some sections through the building, and you see the glass volume going through. And I won't bother you too much with the technical detail, but it's quite complex actually to say, okay, we put glass from outside inside through the concrete. It becomes a very complicated architecture detail to have the concrete ceiling going through, but I think in the end we succeeded. So here you see the final result. We took off the brick, the columns become the architecture, and you see the glass volume going through the building. Oh, sorry, I have to go. Well, it doesn't matter. What's interesting also is that, a beautiful Dutch canal by the way, but what's interesting is that you see that the columns now are getting smaller from the bottom to the top. And when you're walking in the building, you can't really see it, but now suddenly, because the columns are exposed from the outside, you can see the columns becoming more slender towards the top. Some interior shots. In the end, it's quite some luxurious housing. We also do social housing on site, so we have quite a different mix of functions, but this is the most luxurious housing. The second project I'd like to show you in Europe is in the south of France. It's quite interesting, but it's a bit like this site. It has low-rise buildings. There's some beautiful architecture on the side, but not everything is used. And what the client wanted to have here is a mixed program, but also quite dense housing. Well, dense housing for Europe. I think the housing density in Korea is sometimes a bit more extreme. But it's a beautiful site. It's along the Canal du Midi. The Canal du Midi is the canal that goes from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. And it's built in the 1700s. And along the road you have beautiful dry docks where they repair the boats. And we found some of those dry docks, and those are given on the site. So what we saw on the site is that there are a few buildings that are very interesting, and the water is very interesting, but there are also a few elements that we thought, well, we don't keep. So we The lighter ones, the pink ones we took away, and the more darker ones we kept in the end. Then the client wanted, as I said, quite a lot of housing. So where do you put the housing? We couldn't really build it in the tower because Toulouse, where it is built, is very low-rise city. So we couldn't build a tower. So it would be a long bar, or it will be multiple housing on the site. But if we put multiple housing on the site, then we lose the public space. So we decided to have this long bar at the edge of the site to preserve the public space and to keep it for the public. So then we lift it up, so the entry to the site becomes open and still transparent. And we add programs. So we add some to the existing structures, and we add cultural program underneath the housing. And we create connections with the bridge. So here you can see it's a mix of program, cultural, leisure, restaurants, cafe, co-working, and housing. This is the model we built. This is the view from the other side. And here you can see that you then start to create a dialogue with old and new. So you can have the modern buildings and the old buildings together. We create a space for the people. Again, here it's the old shed that we extended with a new shed, old and new together, but it really can work as an architectural dialogue. And we create, because we leave so much space around it, there's enough room for the cultural aspect of the site. There's enough room for the people to meet and to have a cultural program and a public space. And for example, this structure was used as a concert. And again, leave space for the public, very important. Leave space where people can meet, and create the piazza as such. Create connections to the other parts of the building. This is a park nearby that was actually blocked off by the water, so we create a new connection towards the park. It's very important to look at the surroundings. Where can you connect? Where can you make the links for the project? I think that's something we always try to do in our architecture. And you see here that this is the housing. We lift it up. We keep the corner open so to get people on the side and to have the transparency so people see what's happening. Again, underneath the buildings, there is a passage, an opening with transparency so people can look towards the building site. And you see the housing with the outdoor spaces, and there's a public, private outdoor spaces in the building. The third project, I have to go fast, I think, so I'll go a bit speedy, sorry about that. The third project is quite similar as this. It's a military site in Holland, which we're working on right now. It doesn't have, it's an old military site between nature and the history, because this is the dunes and the sea in Holland, and this is where the Atlantic Wall is, so where the bunkers were that the Germans built in the 1940s, 1945. And what the Germans did, there was actually a military airport, and next to that they built the bunkers, but to hide the bunkers, they built actually houses over the bunker, so it looked like a traditional house. So when the Allied forces flew over, they wouldn't bomb the houses because they didn't recognize them as bunkers. So we have on that side 19 pavilions that look like houses, but there's entries into bunkers underground. It's a beautiful landscape in the dunes next to the sea. And what we're studying here is a mix of functions, because next door there will be a very big development in the end. And we're not going to build on site because it's in the nature, but we're going to build the social functions and the community functions in this project. So we're looking for an interesting mix with focus on culture and community. And here you see the mix of the different functions. We have a support of the neighborhood. There's of course not only the cultural heritage, but also the what I noem it's the immaterial heritage. So what happened there? What is the legacy of the history? So you also have to think about that. So can there be a museum to commemorate the 1940-1945 war? Can be elderly care, can be child care. Oh, this is in Korean for me. And here you see the pavilions on the side, the barracks, and how. So we see the barracks in nature, and how can we preserve both? So here we're just giving some ideas, and this might be some ideas that you can use on this side, what you can do with the barracks. And we look at 4 different types: cultural, housing, working, and social. The culture could be a community theater, it could be used for exhibitions. Here you see some inspirations we had for this site. Another inspirations, restaurants, workshops, or markets. The housing could be housing for the elderly, where there's assisted living, or it's a daycare housing, where the elderly only spend their day. It could be combined with childcare, but we keep the existing structure and we build something inside the existing structure. So you preserve a structure like this, but you try to build something in there. Here again some possibilities. Co-working. Co-working for, again, for the local community to have an office space, to go there, to meet. Startups could be there. And there could be a social function. But the possibilities are endless. You could have a restaurant, cafe, wedding venue. But the important thing is we create a space for the community. And I think that's an opportunity you have here also to create this community. I think the other interesting thing is you should build for different generations, so and for the young and for the old, and you should mix those functions. So you really create this sense of community and this sense of place. Another project where we try to do that, and this is maybe another interesting thing, because I think one of the speakers before said that they have to be very careful how they attack this plan, because it's costing a lot of money and it will be very difficult. But what I think is very important, that as soon as possible you take possession of a site like this. So you make some instant or pop-up spaces to create that community. So you start engaging the community, you start engaging the artist, and you create a place for the people again. This is the project I said, which looks a bit like the structure we saw here on site. It's a temporary theater made out of bamboo. It's designed by us and built by us with volunteers. It's built in 2 days, and it's taken down in 1 day. And it's supposed to travel, so you can travel to certain areas. And the good thing about this project is that it is really done by the community, and the community uses this for plays, etc. It is up to 250 seats in different configurations, so it's very flexible. And it's built with bamboo, so very sustainable, low cost. And this project really costed nothing. Okay, you need a lot of volunteers, but the structural cost and building cost is very minimal. And with a thing like this, or with taking possession for the site, you can get it in the hearts and the minds of the neighbors, which I think is very important. And here you see we are building it. So I'll show you very quickly the construction sequence. So first of all, we built the center, the central unit. Then we lift it up. And here you see that we put in a central pole. The central pole holds the structure up for the moment. And then we start folding out the canopy. And we fix it to the vertical poles. It's very low-tech connection, so everybody can do it. This is one of my architects that does it. Well, if an architect can do the connections, then it should be quite simple. Here you can see it. And then we built the first the inner ring, and then we built the outer ring slowly. And you look, it starts already to look like the model that I just showed you before. Here's the structure standing up. And then we add the cover, the tissue. So what we do in the end, because the structure is totally central, we can take out the central pole. It's like a circus tent, actually, the way they build circus tents. They first build the structure, and then the outer ring holds up the structure, so the central pole is then taken away. And we add seating, which is also made on bamboo, off-site, and this doesn't have to be reassembled every time, it's just put back in storage. We add some soft seating for comfort, so people are comfortable during the performances. And then in the end we have our theater, and you have the spectacle. And I think it's very important for placemaking. Again, engaging the local community. Before you can start, it always takes time, there's procedures, we're looking for money, but try to make already something of this place. Try to already take possession of the site with the neighbors, with local artists and the community. This is on another location. This is in a flower field. This is not a render, this is a real image. Yeah, we've put it on multiple projects. Then 5 projects in South Korea with our friends from Archi Workshop. We're sitting here. These 5 public projects we did in Korea have 3 things in common. Well, actually 4, because they're not built, that's one. They were all competitions. They maximize the site condition. They create an attractive public space. They enhance the surroundings between the nature and the neighborhood. These are our friends, the Paris-Seoul collaboration, as we call it. It's a 24-hour architecture. When we were sleeping in Paris, Seoul was working. When we were working in Paris, Seoul was also working, I think. They're always working, but it worked. And the first one I want to show you is Museum Park Incheon. It's an existing cultural heritage site. There are some missionary houses, and there's an OCI building. And our idea was to give part of this site back to the neighborhood to create a park and also create a central hub that was required by the program, the cultural hub by the program. So here you see the site from 1947 onwards, and you see the location of the buildings in red, and slowly you see the buildings filled in. And then in the end, these are the buildings on site. So it's the OCI building on the left bottom, you have the missionary house on the right, and you have the broadcasting building, which are all quite valuable to keep. Not everything should be demolished. There's a lot of cultural heritage here, which I think is very important to keep, even if it's small buildings. So where did we start? So what we have is the existing buildings in a little hill. So our idea was to extend this little hill towards the left and build a program underneath. So a new history museum we built underneath the hill. And above the hill, there will become a new park. Then on the existing OCI building, we built a new landmark building, and that will be the Contemporary Art Museum. And this new cultural hub will then, in the end, become more than the sum of its parts. The result is a park around the missionary housing, underneath the History Museum and the landmark Modern Art Museum. And the good thing about lifting up the park is that underneath the park we create the connections. So we create the connections between the housing and the museum, because the museum is connected, the History Museum is connected to the houses and they are part of the museum. But we also create, again, connections to the neighborhood, which I think is very important, again, to attract your site with the project. Here you see the first ideas of that park going up towards the Contemporary Art Museum, and with the missionary house in front. And then here, what we gave back, instead of just a building on that site, above that building we gave back a park. And again, that's, I think, quite important to look at what is there for the neighborhood, what is there not just for the people that visit, but how can you give back something to the neighborhood. There's also a very urban part of it, facade facing the piazza and the main avenue, and you see the landmark museum. By lifting it up, we invite the public underneath the building from this side. And the good thing about this is that it creates, again, a covered piazza, which in Korean harsh temperature during the summer, that like this summer was very warm, or the very cold winters, or snow and rain, will protect you. And there we have the entries to the museum. The second project I'd like to show you is a Wholesale Food Market in Cheongju. And the question here is, can a 50,000 square meter food market be more than just a generic piece of infrastructure? Normally, if a client asks you to build a food market, it's just a big hall and nothing else. And what we try to do here, well, here you see a food market. Food market is just a logistical hub. It's unloading, buying, and offloading. But can we make something out of this giant landmark? So for this region, it's a significant project. It's as I said, 50,000 square meters. It's quite a small town. So you see the infrastructure. It's quite a big influence on this project. So what we designed here is the logistical hub under one large roof. And we used this roof to create a grid for maximum flexibility. So for future changes, it is ready for the future. But also we use this roof for sustainability. We use the roof to produce solar energy and harvest rainwater. By orientating the roof 45 degrees offside, it will then become southern facing, so which is maximizing the energy intake, but it also then, because we angle it at 35 degrees angle for the sun, we have natural daylight coming in, and therefore we use again less energy. The structure is a timber structure, so from the interior it is a very warm feeling, but it's also very sustainable. In the end, we think our structure will enhance the landscape by its architecture. But also on the ground floor, because of this shed space, it suddenly gets a human scale. So the building gets a scale which is to the size of the city, the size of the mass human. So it's invited for the neighbors to walk in. And it creates a very human architecture with the wood and the natural light coming in. This is the covered main avenue of the loading dock. Then we have the fruit market, we have the fish market, and this is the multi-purpose open piazza. So again, in this site, we created a place for the public. We created a place for the neighbors. So there's a public market. It's a multifunctional site, can be also held with events. But this is a place where the public can come, where the neighbors can come, buy their fruit, buy their vegetables, and interact, have a coffee. I think, again, that's very important. Just doesn't make it an infrastructure hub that is not interacting with the community, but even a market, also a food market, you can integrate into the community. The third project is the Geomdam Museum Library in Incheon. And here was the big question: how can nature and the urban environment coexist and even enrich one another? The site is, as you see it in 2016, it's very rural, but then in 2020 they prepared it for construction, so it's almost a tabula rasa, and there's a little piece of green left. On the left bottom you see a little pond. That's our site. And what we try to do is recreate the landscape that was there before, linking it back. We try to get the continuity of nature back here. So what we do is we propose an eco bridge and use this eco bridge to restore the ecological continuity. And this eco bridge is so important for us that we put the whole museum and all its program and the library underneath this eco bridge. So we explore the potential of the site, first by linking the landscape, then a standard, very non-complex modular building on site. So it looks in the end quite an expensive building, but we use very standard building systems to make it affordable. Then a pedestrian bridge, because you can't combine the eco bridge and the pedestrians together. You have to separate them, but to make the same connection. And here the eco bridge for nature. And in the end, you see that the two parts of the site that were dislinked are now linked again with the eco bridge, and which results then in a park that goes over the buildings and gives back nature to the city. Actually, it's clearly enhancing the site's conditions, of course. So here then we create a gateway from the city towards the park. So because we lift the building up and we let the people going through our building, what we do in multiple of our projects, we create this great gateway into the city, into the park. On the other hand, we create an urban piazza, which you see in this photo. It's an open public space towards the town. Again, a piazza for the people and leaving space for the public. And here you see, because we made this fractured volumes, that it doesn't become too monumental. By splitting up the volumes, again, we give a human scale. The building needs to be a human scale in the city. And then you see the eco-bridge lifting up. I have 5 minutes left, so I go a bit farther. Here you see the traditional Korean maru. It's the sheltered exterior space, but there's some archaeological findings on site where we then expose them here underneath the Maru. The promenade deck. There's the library interiors. And this is the Maru on the library side. And the pond level promenade. Well, I go fast now, sorry about this, but the fourth project is the Biennale exhibition in Gwangju, and here the problem was that the Gwangju Biennale is a very important Biennale for Gwangju, but it's hosting 100 of artists from all around the world, but it's only every 2 years, and it's too small, so it needed expansion. So we got a new site, but the site is next to the highway and is in between the cultural amenities for the town. So we need to link all this together. Again, it's about linking the community. It's in the center of different parks. It connects. It needs to connect the disconnected cultural districts. It's a continuous green network and create public space for local residents. Everyday spaces for the large residential neighborhoods, actually. So it's almost like a spider in the web, you know. It's a spider in the web of cultural facilities, but also to connect the local communities towards the center. Because what we try to do is create again a space for the local community. Normally, a site like this has a parking, has a normal exhibition box, which is nothing special, and then a piazza in front. What we try to do is lift up the building and create a new public forum. And by floating that building up, we create a new public space that is protected from the environment, from the snow, from the rain, and from the harsh sun, for everyday use. So again, we try to invite the people coming in. The Biennale is only used a few times a year, once every 2 years for the Biennale, and then some for other events. But we try to give it back to the people by moving it upwards. I go a bit fast because I have 3 minutes left, I think. Here you see some impression of the public spaces. And public spaces even on multiple levels. And of course, there's also the Biennale main hall. The last one I'd really like to show you is a project I'm really proud of. We finished it this year. We ended 3rd in the competition. And we're very sad. I was there. I was close by last night with Professor Lee. It's a beautiful space. But how can we create an infrastructure that will not only reconnect the city to its waterfront, but become also a sought-after park for all the Koreans? And as you know, the Hanggang Park is a very popular place for the Koreans, from people from Seoul. But the huge infrastructure is blocking the city from the water. Once this was a very soft riverscape where water was flowing in and out, higher tides, it was flowing from the mountain to the river. And it created this carving out lands, these little islands in the riverbeds, and then it washed away again with high tides. Now it's just a disconnected piece of land by the Olympic Main Road, and it's bordered by concrete. So we took inspiration from Korean garden traditioning, which is natural, informal, simple, unforced, and seeking to merge with the natural world. So gradually we connect those islands again to the mountains. So we try to connect the river to the mountains with our islands. And we're linking the main road back to the river and then also with the pedestrian way to the highway. When we position the park, we position it in such a way that it doesn't block the apartments for the residents. And we create underneath our park a network, again, for cultural amenities on ground level. On top of the park, we create islands with different programs, and we slowly ramp it up. So it is a very natural gradient going over the expressway. So there's no, you can just go with a wheelchair. It's a very gradual way to go up. And we create views from the river and skyline from the park. Again, here you see the ground floor condition, where there's a cultural facility. Again, we found a building on site, which is building 108, which is a very important apartment building. We try to keep a part of it, and above it's a continuous park. This is then the programmatic islands that we pose up the park, and in the results in this new park, that is a very fluent green park going from the mountains towards the river. You see here the bustling streets. What we also try to do is that we start with a forest that comes from the mountains, and slowly it opens up towards the river and gets larger, and it takes you, the visitors, over the highway directly into the riverbed, the riverside, in one continuous flow. You see again, it's a very fluent way up and going on the riverbeds to the location where we were last night, Professor Lee. Also underneath, it's a very important space, and here you see this apartment 108 building. It's a several story high building. We couldn't keep everything, but we decided to keep part of it again, so you can cut pieces of your cultural heritage, and we transform it in a cultural center. So again, we make places for the public and have a memory of the past. So I think, again, that's very important, what you can see here. We also have very mineral, urban fabric, together with the natural landscape. And in the end, we restore this missing link from the mountains to the river. The structure itself is an organic structural system, but it's based on a very rational grid to keep costs low. But it creates, again, as you saw in the image before, a landscape on its own. So coming back to the theme of the symposium, regeneration of architectural cultural assets and the future of the city, I think we should create places for people in a dialogue with cultural heritage and to nature to create thriving communities rooted in the past, built in the present and ready for the future. And I think my old boss did it well with Centre Pompidou in Paris. He respected the cultural heritage, but he wasn't afraid to make something else. He left half of the site for the public, and he made a new destination for public and culture. And it should be public spaces for everybody to enjoy. Thank you very much.